In this video, we're going to take a look at a fairly new package in Django called Neapolitan. Now, this is a third-party package, and it allows you to very quickly build CRUD views in a Django application. And the benefit of using this package is that you can take a Django model that you have in your application, for example, this book model that we have here, and you can build very quickly these CRUD views, for example, a page to list all of the books, and the ability to click these books and view the detail page, as well as add new books to the database, update existing books, and also to delete books from the database. And you can do all of this, get all of that CRUD functionality with just 3 lines of code. If we go to views.py, all we need to do is define a Neapolitan CRUD view, link it to a model and specify the fields, and you get all of that functionality basically out of the box. We're going to dive in this video and see how to do that. Now, before we do that, we have this Ko-fi page. If you want to support the channel, we have a link in the description, and we're trying to get to this goal at the moment. So if you can, that would be appreciated. And don't forget to like and subscribe as well. So let's get started. Now, what I have in VS Code is an application in Django. And this was basically generated with the start project and start app command. We have a single app called core. And what we're going to do to start with is install Neapolitan. And we're going to have a look at the Neapolitan documentation to find out a bit more about this package. So let's open that just now, and we're going to read through some of this to start with. If you want to skip to the code, we've got sections in the description. Now, Neapolitan is a reusable library for Django projects, and it provides quick CRUD views for applications. Now, this helps you get your models into the web output very quickly, and it includes base templates and some reusable template tags in the Neapolitan package. Now, what it does in a nutshell is it takes some of the things you might see in the Django admin UI, such as the ability to very quickly create and view resources and update and delete resources. You can do all of that now with Neapolitan inside of a normal Django application. So not necessarily as an admin user, you can very quickly spin up these CRUD views using the Neapolitan package. Now, this is fairly new and I've not used it a lot, so we're going to dive into this and explore it in this video. But in a nutshell, if you have a Django model, you can very easily create these CRUD views by importing this class from Neapolitan. It's called CRUDView. And then after you've imported that, you can simply subclass it and provide it a model along with some fields that you then can create and update new instances of the model. And when you've done that, Neapolitan will then render some default pages for you to allow you to view these resources attached to the model, as well as update, create and delete these resources. So let's dive in now to an example. If we click this link here for the tutorial, we can see how to install Neapolitan. So we have a pip install command, and the name of the package is Neapolitan. So I'm going to copy that, and let's open VS Code. We have a terminal at the bottom. I'm going to run pip install here, and we're going to pass in Neapolitan. That's going to install this package into the Python virtual environment. Once that's installed, what we can do, if we go back to the documentation, now we've already started a Django project and we've created an application in that project. We're going to create a model very soon. If we go just below this block here, we're going to add Neapolitan to installed apps. So if you're using this package, you need to have it in the installed apps setting. So let's go to settings.py, and at the bottom, we're going to add Neapolitan. Now, the idea of a CRUD view is centered around models in the application. So let's go to models.py. And what I'm going to do in this video is imagine that we were building a library management system, and imagine that we can add, update, and remove books from the library, as well as view the books that we have in the library at a given time. So we're going to build this CRUD view in Neapolitan in order to do that. But to start with, we need some models. So what I'm going to do to start with is create a model called author, and that's going to inherit from Django's model class. And I'm going to keep this model very simple. It's going to have a name, which is going to be an instance of a char field, and we'll give that a max length of 100 characters. And we'll also define a _string method on the author to return the name of this author. Now, the core model in this application is going to be the book model. So let's create another Django model here called book, and we're going to tie the book to its author, its parent author, and we're going to use a foreign key to do that. So that's why we've created the author model. What we're going to do now is create the fields on the book model. Now, one of the fields that we're going to add here is going to be a genre field that's going to take some choices. So I'm going to paste this list in here, and this contains some different book genres that you might have in a library. Once we've done that, we can create the fields on the book. So the book will have a name. That's going to be an instance of a char field. And let's give that a max length of 200 characters. As well as that, we also want the genre. So this is going to be the choice field. We'll set that to a char field, and we'll give it a max length of 4 characters, because if you look at the genre choices above, The first element of this tuple that's going to be stored in the database, that's a string that contains 4 characters or less, and that's the human readable name for the given genre. So that's going to have a max length of 4, but we also want to attach those choices so that the form that Neapolitan is going to create for us knows about these choices. So in order to do that, we can set the choices keyword argument of the car field to this list that we created here. So that's the genre field. I'm going to create a couple of more fields. Published date. Let's set that to a models.date field. And I'm going to create a Boolean field on the book as well to denote whether or not it's available in the library. So we're going to make that a models.boolean field. And we can pass default arguments in here. So for example, by default, we might want to make the book available in the library. So we're going to default that to true. And the final field on the model is going to be the author field. And that's going to be the foreign key that we have to the parent class, the author model. And when we delete an author, we're just going to cascade that. So these are the fields on the model, and one of them has these choices defined. What we're also going to do is, like before, define a _string method to return the name of the book. Now, once we create the Django model classes, we can save models.py. I'm going to clear the terminal, and we're going to run a management command here, and that's the make migrations command. That's going to create the migration files, and when we create these migration files, we can then run the manage.py migrate command, and that's going to create the SQLite database, and it's also going to create those new tables in the database for the 2 models that we've just added. Now, once we've done this, and again, this is the setup part of the video, it won't take much longer. We're going to go to admin.py, and I'm going to register these models in the Django admin, so we can import the models into admin.py. And then we call the admin.site.register function, and that provides a very simple way to register your Django models in the admin interface. Once we've done that, again, let's go to the terminal and we're going to run another management command, and that's going to be the create superuser command. So we're going to create a superuser for this application called admin, and we can give them a password. Once we've done that, we can run the Django development server and we can log into the admin. Once we're in the admin UI, we can go to the different models that we have. At the top right, we have a button to add a new author. We're going to do that now, and I'm going to resume the video after I've added some authors and some books to the system. So I've now loaded that data, and we now have some authors here, and we also have some books that are attached to these authors. We're going to work with these and develop a CRUD view using Neapolitan that's going to allow us to view this data in the normal Django user interface, as well as allow us to create, update, and delete book instances from the system. So as we saw earlier, if we go back to the documentation, if we go down to this section on wiring up Neapolitan views, what we have here is the import of a CRUDView class. So I'm going to copy this, and we can go back to the Django project, and we're going to go to views.py, and at the top we can import that CRUDView class from Neapolitan.views. Once we have that, we can create our own class and subclass this CRUDView. So what I'm going to do is create a class here called BookView, and we create a subclass of the CRUDView, and there's a field on that called model that we can set to the model we want to tie this CRUDView to, and that's going to be the book model in our application. Now we need to import the book model at the top as well, so let's do that from the models.py file. And we also want to provide a list of fields, or a tuple of fields, and these fields are the ones that we're going to display on a form when we add a new book or when we update an existing book. So I was going to set that as a tuple. Actually, let's just set it as a list. We want to update or add a book, and we want to specify a name, an author, a genre, the publish date, and the is available fields. And these are all fields that we defined on the book model class here. So we can pass all of these, or maybe some of these fields have a default value. We don't need to add it to the CRUD view. So you have a bit of flexibility over the fields here. Now we can customize the CRUD view even more by defining some functions on the view. I'm not going to do that at the moment, but let's go back to the documentation. Now, if we scroll to the top here, let's go back to the main page here. And what I'm going to do is go to the CRUD view reference. And the CRUD view, this is the core of Neapolitan, and it will provide the standard list, detail, create, edit and delete views for a model, as well as any hooks that you might need if you want to customize any part of that. Now if we scroll down a bit here, the CRUD view provides handlers for these different views. So for example, for list and detail views, the CRUD view provides a list method, and the list method allows you to customize the logic when you're fetching a query set of the given model. And we can also customize the behavior when we fetch an individual model, and that's using the detail method. As well as that, we have custom views that we can override if we want to create and update views with some custom logic, and the same for a delete view. And if we scroll down further, we can customize the query set and object lookup. Now if you're familiar with Django class-based views, you might be familiar with these methods such as getQuerySet and getObject. So the CRUD view comes built in with all of these methods that you can use to customize and hook into different parts of the request processing. So this is customizable. We are going to just work with the out-of-the-box definition, so we don't need to override any of these methods. If you're interested in more videos on Neapolitan where we dive into this, or even class-based views in Django in general, let me know in the comments and we'll consider some of these different videos. And one last one to note just before we go back to the application. For response rendering, we have getContextData. So if you need to add custom context into the response and make that available in your Django templates, you can also override this method here, as you can see, in order to provide custom data, custom keys and values in that context dictionary. Now I'm going to go back to the tutorial that we were looking at. So let's go back to this here, and let's go back to the section on wiring up Neapolitan views. If we go just down here, you can see that what this is defined in this CRUD view is a urls.py file. Now we've done that in the views.py file, that's where these kind of views should be defined. But what this is doing at the bottom is it's calling the name of the class and it's calling a getURLs static function on that class. So that's going to generate all of the CRUD URLs for this given view. So what we're going to do is go to the URL patterns that we have in the application. And what we're going to do here is remove this list. We don't need the list itself. We're going to reference the views that we've imported here. And we called our Neapolitan view book view. So let's reference that. And that has that static method getURLs. We can call that, and that's going to generate the URLs for the book view. And that's going to include URLs to get a list of books, to get an individual book by its ID, as well as the create, update, and delete URLs. Now before we try this out, let's go back to the documentation one more time. Neapolitan will expect to extend a base template. So the default templates that come with this package, they will extend base.html. So you're going to have to provide that if you're wanting to work with this package. Now if we go back to VS Code, I'm going to go to the core applications templates directory, and that contains a base.html template that has some HTML boilerplate essentially, and we're going to use that as the base template. Importantly, it defines a content block, and Neapolitan is going to extend this base template and define its own content block, and that's going to inject the HTML from those templates into this section of the base template. So after all that, we're ready to test this out. I'm going to go back to the browser where we're on the Django admin UI, and let's go to the root URL of this project. Now when we send that request, we get back this page here, and that's the 404 not found page. But if we look at the URLs that are defined here, as well as the admin URLs, we now have these different URLs here. There's 5 of them for different book-based endpoints. So for example, /book will give us the book list page, and /book/primary key is going to give us the detail page. And we can also send a post request to book/new in order to create a new book. And also we have endpoints or URLs for updating books and deleting books. So let's start with the list endpoint. We're going to add that URL at the top, so it's /book. And when we send this request, we get back this table here containing all of the books that we have in this system. And we have a button here that will allow us to add a new book. And we get this very basic looking form that's going to allow us to add a new book into the database. As well as that, we have actions on the right hand side of this table. So to view an individual book, such as Neuromancer at the top, we can click view and we get back some of the information about the book. You can see the details that we defined in the model, such as the publish date, the genre, and we have a primary key for the author. And if we go back to the table, we also have actions for editing a book. If we wanted to edit this, for example, let's pluralize that book. We get back this now, and if we go back to the table and refresh, you can see that that has updated that in the database. And we can also delete the book if we want to as well. That takes us to this confirmation page, and we can click delete. So this is all working now using Neapolitan. we have all of these CRUD actions available to us. And if we look at the Django view that we had to write in order to do this, it was extremely simple. We just inherited from or subclassed the CRUD view, and then we linked that to the given model and provided the fields that we want to add or update. And all of that functionality then was provided for us out of the box. Now you might notice that it doesn't look particularly good. So out of the box, it's very basic in terms of the UI styles. But if we go back to the tutorial and go down to next steps, you can see that the default templates that Neapolitan provides, they use TailwindCSS classes for styling. So what we need to do is integrate TailwindCSS into Django, and there's more than one way to do this, and what we are about to do in the method described in this documentation is not recommended for production. If you're wanting to do this in production, there are better ways of doing that, and I'm going to make videos very soon on how to incorporate Tailwind into a Django project in a more production ready way, let's say. But what we're going to do for now is just copy the script tag that is from the CDN, and that's going to copy the entire source for Tailwind CSS and import that into your project. So let's go to base.html and let's go to the head tag, and underneath the title I'm going to paste that script, and that's the CDN link for Tailwind CSS. Now with that one simple change, we can go back to the page that we have here, and when we refresh the page you can see this is now looking a lot better. So the table is all styled up with Tailwind CSS, so are the buttons, and so are the links. And when we click the view action, we're taken to this page here for the book detail view. And of course, you can extend these templates to add your own features and your own pieces of functionality, etc. These are just basic defaults that are provided out of the box by Neapolitan. Now, one thing to note, if we click add a new book, the form that you see here is not styled up. It's not looking particularly nice. Although the button itself looks okay, the rest of it is not looking ideal. Now what we want to do here is we want to add some Tailwind styles to the form. But the question is, why does the table page here and why does the detail page have these styles, but this add page here that you see with the form and also the edit page, these do not contain the Tailwind styles by default? Now what I'm going to do is go to the Neapolitan GitHub page. So we're on this GitHub page now, and what I'm going to do is go to the source code, and we can look at the default templates that come with Neapolitan. And the one we're interested in here is the object form.html. Now this is the one that renders the form to add a new object or to update an object. And if you look here, you can see that the form is basically rendered directly to the page. So we're not applying any styles here. And that makes sense because as much as Neapolitan gives you a lot of good stuff out of the box, if we look back at the table page, one thing it doesn't know is what the models in your application are going to be. It doesn't have any information about the fields that are going to be involved in the form, so it can't target those fields directly and provide styles by default. So it's kind of up to you, I think, if you're using this package, to just override this template and provide these styles for your forms. We're going to do that just now. Let's go back to the documentation for Neapolitan. And what I'm going to do is go to the template reference page. So this is a page that tells you a bit more about the generic templates that can be used as a starting point for your project. We've already seen these here. These are just a starting point. You can extend these. And what we're going to do is we're going to extend them using this management command that's provided by Neapolitan. It's the make template management command. So if you want to override a single template for your model, you can run this make template management command and you provide the model that you want to apply this to, and then you can provide the action after that. So what I'm going to do is go back to VS Code and let's go to the terminal and stop the Django development server. And we're going to run python manage.py, and it's the make template management command. Now the model is in the core application and it's the book model, and the action that we want to override is the create action. So we pass the -- create flag, and then we can run this command and let's see what happens. Now we get the following error, and that's that there's no such file or directory. And what it's looking for within the core/templates folder, if we go there just now, core/templates, it's looking for another subdirectory called core. Now in there we don't have that, so we're going to create a new folder now called core within the templates directory, and that's a Django convention. When you have an application name such as core, if that's got templates in that application, you can then create a templates directory, and then you can create another subdirectory with the name of the app. And that's what we're doing here, and we've called that subdirectory core, and that's the same name as the application. So what I'm going to do is try running this command again. It's called make template. And then when we run that, this time we don't get an error. And if we look in the core directory, you can see that a template file has been generated here, and that's bookform.html. So I'm going to minimize the terminal and we're going to look at the book form, and you can see that that is extending the base.html, and that's the reason that the base.html file is outside of this core directory, because otherwise we would need to change this to core/base.html and it wouldn't work with the default templates. So we now have this custom book form.html, and that's going to be rendered when we go to the add book page. So when we click this, we're going to be taken to that add book page, and you can see the same form as we saw before, but it's actually loading this new template that we actually have in the project. It's not the default template. So I'm going to change this up a little bit, and we're going to style the form better. And I'm going to use TailwindCSS because that's already installed in this project. And we're going to do that alongside Django-Crispy-Forms. So what I'm going to do is go to the GitHub page for Crispy Tailwind, and this is a Tailwind template pack for Django-Crispy-Forms. So we're going to use Django-Crispy-Forms. We're going to use the syntax that you're probably familiar with from that package. And we're going to apply the crispy filter that you can see here to the form that's in this template. So we need to install these. So let's go back to the documentation, and we're going to run pip install crispy tailwind in the virtual environment. So at the bottom here, let's run pip install crispy tailwind. That's going to install that into the virtual environment. Once we've done that, let's go back to the GitHub page. What we need to do is add both Django-Crispy-Forms and Crispy Tailwind to the installed apps. So let's start with that and go back to VS Code. I'm going to go to settings.py. Underneath Neapolitan, let's paste these in. So we now have Crispy Forms and Crispy Tailwind in the installed apps. We can go back to the documentation, and these two lines of code, I'm going to copy these, and just below installed apps, I'm going to paste these in. So crispy allowed template packs, we're going to set that to Tailwind. And we're also going to set the crispy template pack variable to Tailwind as well. Now we can save settings.py and we can close that off. And if we go back to bookform.html, we're going to add some code here now. Now to the form, we want to add the crispy template filter. So let's do that just now, but it's not going to work by default. And if we go back to the GitHub page, we're going to see what we need in order to get that working. So if you're using the crispy filter, what we need to do at the top is load the Tailwind filters from the crispy Tailwind package. So let's copy that and go to the top here. And underneath the extend statement, we can load those filters. If we then start the Django development server and go back to the application, you can see the form as it was before. But if we refresh the page, we're going to see that this now looks a lot better because it's using those styles from Tailwind CSS that have been applied by this crispy Tailwind package that we've added to the project. Now you might notice how large some of these fields are. We can constrain the size of this form just by adding a container around it. So I'm going to go back to the template here, and we have the form here, and we also have a div. We can add a class from Tailwind to this div, and let's say width 50% here. If we add that and then save this, when we go back to the page and refresh the page, you can see the form takes up 50% of the width. So it's very easy to take the default templates provided by Neapolitan and to extend those in order to add your own styles and add your own custom HTML into that template. Now just to see that it's working, let's go back to the form, and I'm going to add some data to this form, and then we're going to test submitting this form. So I've added this data for the book 𝗵𝗽𝗽𝗶𝗹 by William Gibson, and this is a sci-fi book, and I've added a dummy publish date here. If we click save, we're then taken to the new detail page for this new book, and you can see in the URL we have a primary key of 8 that's been assigned to this book. And then if we go back to the list page, you should see that at the bottom here we have our new book, so it's been successfully added to the database when we submit that form. And of course we can view the detail page, we can edit the existing data, and we can also delete that book from the database using the delete action. So that's the power of Neapolitan. It allows you to very easily generate an entire set of CRUD views for a given model in your application. And you can then customize those pages, and you can customize the behavior of the view class in whatever ways you need to in order to achieve the functionality that you want. If you're interested in any more Neapolitan videos in any kind of context, let me know in the comments, but that's all for this video. Thanks very much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the content, and subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. And as we mentioned at the start of the video, if you're enjoying this content and you want to support the channel, consider donating to the coffee goal that we have. We've got a link in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.